Okay. So as we said, the main directories in the system are everyday docs where your procedures, your records, and instructions and stuff are located. Mentor is for training materials, and Tech Tools is a repository for blank forms of workbooks. We talked about the correlation matrices, being showing the requirements of the standard where they've been met in the management system. And now we're going to get into the manual. Well, let's go back here. Everyday docs are subdirectories in here, and they're split up into administrative procedures, your operational procedures, your planning procedures, which we went over the last time, and then your records. Also in here is your external documents and standards. And there's a document in here for diagrams for like your building layout, which you're going to have.
Okay.
Okay, so and we'll get into that. Okay, but there's a place in here to just drop them in here. So, and the idea of that is that typically we put organization charts in there, and we put building charts in there. Organization charts, in larger companies, stuff like that, because people move. So by just referencing it from the manual into that diagrams directory, it can change as many times as it needs to in the directory, and we don't have to keep revising the manual. Same thing with the building layouts. There's changes to the building layout if you move things around, or let's say you actually move into another building, then again, we don't have to fuss around with revising the quality manual because it'll be revised. The record,
Gotcha.
the record section in here, you'll see that there are certain records in here which are, they're not timed. So like your calibration records and so on and so forth. And then those ones that are more time tied to where you may want to be able to go back to, let's say, 2025 and look for a record or something like that. We've split those up, and you have enough in there for 5 years. So then your registrations, license, and permits, the record matrix, the safety data sheet, so on and so forth. And again, we'll get into that a little bit later. In the records directory, you'll notice that everything is it's an acronym. Okay, those acronyms are all tied to the forms. So a BIRL-F form goes into BIRL. CAR-F goes into CIR, and so on and so forth. Let's go back here one. Okay, and as I said, certain one of these not time dependent. Your calibration records, your completed workbooks, because basically once you've done that, you're basically, if you revise them, they're still going to be in there. We don't want to put it into a year and have to do it every year. Okay, like your record matrix, your safety data sheets, anything that you bring in, any kind of a chemical or anything like that, you have to have a safety data sheet for. The SNUA, that's a serial number opt-out agreement. We'll get into that. Training and competence matrix, and your validation record. Okay, some of these are not going to be as relevant as others.
Some may become relevant in time.
Exactly. In time, they will become relevant. But right now, at least we've got a place for them.
Right.
In this main directory, you see there are 2 documents in here, and we talked about this before, but we'll hit them again. And they're in here. There's no workbook for them. They just reside here, and that's because they are what we call a one-off document. Once they've been created, you will never create another one. You will simply just continue to update these that are in here. That's why they're in the main directory, and that's why they're not located in the forms directory. Okay, so let's jump over to the manual here. So again, we have, your information in here, your address and stuff like that. Have your nice little logo on there. By the way, how did you get the nickname Red?
Oh,
Or you don't have to go into it if you don't want to.
Just let me change my position here. It's pretty obvious. I went for cheesy marketing strategy 101.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. BIOS requires you to list any associated entities. Of course, you don't have any, but we have to address that requirement. That's why it's in here, and that's why it just says none here. The statement here is basic. This is basically just a statement to let anybody know that what you're looking at is the quality management system, environmental health and safety quality management system, and it was built based on the standards or the relevant standards of RIOS and the R2 responsible recycling standard. That also needs to have ISO 9001 in there. So let's fix that real quick. There it is. We don't need all of it. We just need that part. Okay. But get this now so I don't forget it. Wish the sucker had a okay, so let's fix that, make that bold. Okay. And change color on it. Let's see, I think we're doing this. Yeah, I'll fix the color later. Okay. This is a caveat statement. It's basically saying that this is an electronic system that the only valid system or documents in this system are going to be found on this portal. So if it's found anywhere else, then it's considered reference only. Okay, that's kind of a 9001 kind of a statement in there, and that it's issued under document control. And then again, we have this statement down here about the matrices, the correlation matrices, and you can see they're all linked. Everything that we can link, we link in the system because it's just easier that way. It just comes up, you got it right there, and then you get on with your business. Okay, so we have certain people that have to be called out in the system, like the man who in the organization has oversight over the management system. Well, this is pretty simple for you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's you. Data protection representative, it's you. Environmental health and safety coordinator is
me.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeehaw.
Man, I need to get that guy a bonus for doing so many jobs.
Yes, so. Okay, then we have a scope. We have to have a scope that is a requirement for all of these standards. And it's just basically, we used to do more in-depth scopes, and after talking with the cert bodies and stuff like that, they basically said, you don't need to be that extensive. Do more like what we do when we do the certificates. So it just basically says, you perform the following: downstream vendor management, physical and logistical data sanitization, test and repair of consumer electronics. And then there's the rest of the system down here. There's more for the environmental section. Anyway, and it just says that it was all put out under the do the management review. Now we have this false impression statement. This is a new one from Siri. It says that you have to notify them if you screw up. Okay, simple as that.
Good to know.
Company overview. Now, when you're looking to expand and get into, bigger contracts and stuff like that, especially those people that want you to be R2 certified. So having this overview of the company in here is always valuable. Might as well get a plug in while they're looking at the manual. You may want to flesh that out a little more, give it a little more detail. Turn it into kind of a sales pitch.
Gotcha.
Okay. Other interested parties. Again, ISO says that we have to identify who, outside of government entities, who would have some kind of interest in what we are actually doing. So we have a website that we go to for this, and we will go through that. And the only thing that we could find in there that might have any kind of interest in what you're doing was Circular Indiana. That was it. The rest of it is just kind of generic term. Downstream vendors and their personnel, company personnel and their families, transporters, yada, 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 and the end users. Okay, the exclusions. Some standards allow us to exclude certain things out of it if they're not relevant, but we have to list them out. So exclusions for R2V3, specialty electronics, and for in reuse. Things like old Mac computers, Apple computers, things that are just, they're collector pieces, or specialty things like old console TVs, and stuff like that. They're more collector items than anything. It can include things like a Square D controllers, PLCs, programmable logic controllers and stuff like that, which I don't think you're actually dealing with. Appendix E, materials recovery. I have had more arguments with auditors that I've won about materials recovery. So I'm going to give you a heads up on this right now. Materials recovery only relates to if you are dismantling things to recover precious metals. If you're, in essence, if you are smelting, then that is relevant to you. Just taking something up, just taking something apart is not materials recovery.
I gotcha. Yeah, you mean raw material, not
exactly.
I gotcha. Yeah,
and I've had to go all the way to Siri. I got a friend of mine in Siri that actually is one of the guys that wrote the standard, and I've had to go to him several times and say, "Will you get a hold of these guys and tell them what materials recovery actually is?" Because they don't seem to be able to read.
Yeah, it's not taking the hard drive out of computer; it's melting the hard drive down for the steel and copper and gold. Yeah,
right. Yeah, they want. We've had some auditors who want to say, well, if you're taking a phone apart and you're recovering the keyboard or you're recovering the screen, that's material recovery. No, it's not, and that's not based on the standard. So, brokering is where essentially you're just the middleman between material going from point A to point B. You never see it, you never touch it, it never comes into your facility. You're just making the arrangements for it to be picked up here and dropped off here. So, and then this is the new one. They just added this. This is basically the only thing they added in that 3.2 version was photovoltaic modules or solar panels. Okay, Rios does not allow you to exclude anything. So it says no exclusions. Exclusions for ISO 9001, we excluded property belonging to customers or external providers. that would be essentially what we call consigned material. It's where the customer gives you something, they continue to own it while you have it in your possession, and it goes back to them at the end.
Interesting. All right.
Okay. So, like in the automotive industry, General Motors will send a die to one of their suppliers. That die belongs to General Motors. When they're done with that, then that die goes back to General Motors.
Gotcha.
The other cases like that would be where, let's say in machining, I may send in what they call greens. They're parts that haven't been machined yet, and I still own them while the company is actually doing the machining on it, and then they return it back to me, and they just charge me for the machining. Those two things are called customer consigned material. You don't have that, we take it out.
Gotcha.
The organization structure. Yeah. You have to have an org chart, which is basically going to be a square. And that's about all there is to it. It's gonna be you.
Just me in the middle. All right, cool.
Just you. Yep. And yeah, that's gonna be fairly easy. Okay.
That'll be underwhelming for them to show up and get to that part.
Yeah. Well, it's not that unusual. I've like I said, I've been an auditor for a long time, and I had a number of clients that they were the only guy. And that's what their organizational chart looked like. It was them. Okay.
That makes me feel good.
Okay. Facility layout and footprint. This is a RIOS requirement. What you have to do on this is you have to show a layout, a general layout of your facility, where things are located, and you have to call out where there's actually actual hazards. Now, again, you're not going to have much of anything.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about the giant vault of acid or
right.
Explosive.
If you have cleaning materials or something like that in a cabinet, then you would call that out because they're hazardous materials.
Bleach is bleach. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we'll have to replace that. Draw one up, and actually, if you're, I don't know how adept you are at working with graphics programs or paint or anything like that. If you're not, just sketch it up, take a picture of it, send it to me, and I'll put it in here for you. Not a problem.
I have a little experience, but not much. MSM Paint grew up with that, but
you can do. Yeah, you can do a facility layout with that really easy.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now it can either go in here or it can go in the diagrams. Now, I would suggest putting it in the diagrams because that way, when you get into another facility, that this won't have to change because this link only just only goes to the diagrams folder. Okay. Okay, now we get into the policies. Okay. There are, I don't know, have you looked at the manual at all?
Just a quick glance, but it's been 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, you've seen all the policies. There's a lot of policies in all of them, except for the quality policy. Quality policy is the 9001. Everything else is R2. And some of the policies are ridiculous. What can I say? Like your prison labor and child labor.
No.
Okay, that might be applicable outside of the United States. In the United States, we
I don't know.
have
The child
laws.
labor might be slightly applicable. I would love to get my children's helping me out. So, but
Yeah. Well, that's different. That's not slave labor. That's helping out.
Yeah, that's chores. Yeah.
Exactly. Like Bob's Burgers.
Exactly.
Okay, I had to get something from my wife here. So what we did was, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of companies, and I'm guilty of it myself. A lot of companies take a tremendous amount of time spending it on writing these big flowery statements and stuff. And okay, again, I'm an auditor. Who looks at it? Who cares about it? The auditor.
Yep.
Okay. Other than that, not really much. Okay. So what we did is basically we just reiterated what the requirement was in the standard. And then we just put the company name in there, and it avoids a lot of problems because number one, the auditor doesn't have to dig through it to find out if you've covered everything that's required because it says exactly the same thing it does in the standard. Okay, so you can get through it quickly. But oh yeah, climate change statement was a new requirement in the 9001 that just came about. What was it? January, I think. Okay, so it's yeah. I'm not going to get into that. I could go on. I could go on and on about that. But anyway, then we have the occupational health and safety policy, the environmental policy, the data security policy, food and beverage policy. You're not allowed to eat or drink while you're processing materials. Any discrimination policy, and you'll see this. We kind of we put something in there for that, and I'll get into that. Child forced labor and prison labor policy, hierarchy of responsible management strategies policy, the return policy. Okay, everything. You can't sell anything as is with no returns. Rios doesn't, or R2 doesn't allow it. You have to give them some kind of a return policy.
Interesting.
We just basically just set everything at 30 days for right now.
Works.
Okay, so this management's PDCA, it's a plan, do, check, act diagram, or a Deming wheel, or a Shewhart cycle, depending on what school you come from. Actually, Dr. Deming is the one who actually came up with it. This is the 30,000 foot view of your management system. So if you were in a plane, you're 30,000 feet up, you're going to get, you might get a little bit of an idea of where you're at, but not a lot of detail. And that's what this is. It just says, okay, here's our inputs, business and standards, industry requirements, regulations, and stuff like that. That feeds into this gold circle, which is your management system. So you have your management system planning, your risk assessment, audits, actions, reviews, and improvements. This is your continual improvement loop. And then coming out of that is your outputs, your regulatory filings, your records and stuff like that. Okay. We go from 30,000 feet to 10,000 feet. Now you're going to get a little more detail. So ISO is very big on interaction of processes. And there's actually a good reason for that. Back in the days, 1980s, 90s, what we found out in the field as auditors, we found that there were certain requirements in the standard. You could be completely compliant with a requirement of the standard over here and completely compliant with the requirement of the standard over here, the two being absolutely critical to each other, and there be no connection to them between them whatsoever. So long about 2000, when ISO revised, they said you have to show those things have to be connected together. There has to be an interaction. So basically, this is just a general overview of what the interactions are. The management system leads you to the procedures. Procedures will lead you to SOPs and instructions, or they will lead you to forms and records. SOPs and instructions will lead you to forms and records. And then there's just a brief description of what those are over here. Okay, so we have the process flow. And what this is just a general, quick, down and dirty glance at your operation of what's going on. So somebody wanted to know what was going on in your operation. Boom, here we have it here. Now we may need to adjust this a bit. We'll see. So I say electronics picked up from received from the customer. That's going to go in one and two directions. It's either going to go to general electronics to processing, or it's going to be data devices, secure data destruction area. From there, it's going to go to data sanitization only, which will loop back into processing, or it's data device destruction. And then from over here, sort and classify devices. Then we have repair and refurbish or dismantle to recover pieces that we might be able to use for something else. Test and classify, package and label, and then everything comes down here to ship to the customer or to your downstream vendor. So again, in very broad brush terms, this is what we're seeing happen in your operation. Okay, again, elements and interactions, again, it's more for ISO than it is for you. It's just to show that we have those planning, administration, and operational, and just to show that they all interact with each other.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we get down to page 14 and we're actually getting into some useful information here. Okay, so we have the planning procedures, which we went through on the last session. And then over here, and they're linked. And then over here, what do they interact with? So advanced planning interacts with training and competence and interacts with identification of legal and other requirements and developing the risk-based assessment and controls. So again, ISO being very big on interactions. So we put them in here. We want to make sure that the auditors understand that we understand it. Okay, then we get into our operational procedures. So we have receiving and we have shipping up here. Did I lose somebody?
No, oh, let me mute the other one. Oh no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this computer was about to die and got it set up on the other computer.
Okay.
A work laptop that I take with me to and from work, and then I got my desktop back at home. So, but like I said, I left the charger somewhere else. I'm really afraid I may have recycled the charger, thinking it was a different charger.
Ah.
Right,
Okay, so breach incident plan is if you had ever misplaced or lost a data device, you have to have a reaction plan for that. Again, I mean, we've all heard the stories about the guy that left his laptop sitting in a cab in New York, and it had, hundreds of thousands of people's credit cards information and stuff on there. And then they go back to the company. The company has to monitor everybody's credit rating for any suspicious activity for 3 years. I think that's the mandatory. I think it's 3 years that they have to do that. And then, all the insurance and stuff that goes along with that. Okay. So this is the breach incident plan. Calibration, control of non-conforming material, electronics equipment categorization, which it used to be when you got material that you were going to ship out, you identified it. There was only 3 things, either it didn't work, or it was it worked minimally, or it was completely good. That was it. Now there's like 20,000 of them. I'll show you that. So, facility equipment and maintenance, housekeeping. Housekeeping is more of a 9001. It actually is R2 actually does have a mention on it in there, but primarily it's 9001. Processing, secure destruction, transportation, new one. Validation verification, again, that goes back to 9001. Your packaging and labeling, and your handling, preservation, and storage. Then we get into your administrative procedures. Filing for license permits, purchasing orders, sales, training and competence. Ones that are not really connected with the processing. Your health and safety committee. Now here's a place here for SOPs, standard operating procedures, and there's one here for instructions. Now, we make a differentiation between the two. SOPs are related to processing material. Instructions are related to more administrative kinds of things, like how do I get into QuickBooks and do a purchase order, something like that. Where okay, well, it's part of the system, but it's more of an administrative function than anything.
I gotcha.
Okay, but SOPs would be directly related to how do I do this? How do I take a Nokia phone apart? How do I recover a keyboard out of a Samsung phone or something like that? We'll also include in here, we've given you one in here, a lockout tagout program. Federal requirement. So we just give it to you. It's essentially, it's the same for everybody. Lockout, tagout. And then in the instructions, we give you some instruction. We'll give you a couple of instructions in here. We have an instruction on how to develop an instruction.
Interesting.
And we have an instruction in here on how to develop a standard operating procedure, an SOP. Okay, let's hang on just a minute. I gotta give my wife a hand here. I'll be right back.
That's all right.
And let me pause that recording again. Okay. Okay, then we have the R2 reuse plan down here. And then we say, what are they and where are they located? This is pretty much mainly just for the auditor. ISO has a very specific hierarchy of documentation. And this is just to show the auditor that we understand what that hierarchy is, and this is how it works in this management system. So if you think of this as like a pyramid, we start out, and as we go down the pyramid, it just gets bigger and bigger at the base. Of course, your records are always going to be what you have the most of. Normative references, anything that we reference in the management system, we have to list it here. Okay, so the R2 standard and the REC, which is the material identification, ISO 9001, the new 9001 amendment, and then this ISO 19011. We put that in there. We ask you that you should have it. That is the guideline for auditing management systems. Now, we don't just put it in there because we reference it in the standard for, or in the procedure for internal, external audits and assessments. We put it in there because the more you know about that standard, the more of a level playing field you are on with your auditor. Because that's the standard that he has to audit to. You'll know what he's allowed to do, and more importantly, you'll know what he's not allowed to do, and you'll know what your rights are as far as an auditee. So it's a good document to have and a good document to know. Then, of course, we had our interested parties. Well, regulatory is an interested party, but we list them here separately. So we have it all the way from, hang on just a second. Okay. So we list all your regulatory resources from the city all the way up to federal. And then if you're looking for what you're required to do and what you're required to have, then it'll get you in the ballpark. It won't get you to exactly where you need to go, but it will get you into the ballpark.
All right.
Then we have the the revision history down here. So ISO used to require that we have a master document list, and so that it's useless, because I mean, again, having been an auditor for many years, and me and other auditors always complained about this, that master document list is never correct. It's never correct. No matter where you go, somebody misses something. It doesn't get recorded because they're two separate documents. One gets changed and the other one gets forgotten. So again, as we come up, we used to say the master document list was the directory. Well, in the last version of ISO 9001, they dropped the requirement for the master document list altogether. So we said we still have to have a way to control these documents.
Gotcha.
So we said, okay, let's look at all the industries that we work in. Let's see how they're controlling their thing. And so, okay, well, an engineering print, whether it's a blueprint, a sepia, or a CAD file, in the on the blueprints, typically in the United States, in the lower right-hand corner, is a complete history of that blueprint. Every time a dimension was changed, every time a datum was moved or anything like that, it's all recorded. And all of it, the whole history of that document is listed in there. So we'll do the same thing with our documents. So we issue the document out, and you can see there's a couple blank lines above that. So we stack the revisions on top.
Gotcha.
That we have a complete history of everything that happened to that document from the time it was released to the present. Every change is noted in there. That keeps it from, having to go in and highlight a new change or change it into italics or something so somebody knows that there was a change in this document. It kind of got ridiculous at a point. This eliminates all that. We put it in here. We say where the change was. We give a real simple explanation of what the change was. It may be just something as simple as we change the verbiage in clause 2.1. But it flags somebody to say, oh, okay, there's something new in 2.1. Let me go up there and take a look at it. All the documents are like that, with the exception of forms. Forms do not require to have a running history on it. All we have to do is have a date and a revision level, which you'll see. Okay, so let's go up here and let's look at some of the problem children in here.
All right.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to tell you that a lot of the procedures in here are written exactly the way the standard wants them to be written. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on them. So we've already gone through the planning procedures, and they're directly connected to the form. So there's no reason to spend a lot of time on those because, you know, the form is the form. Unless you change the form, the procedure doesn't need to change. The operational ones, like, well, I mean, just go ahead and flag these for you right now. These are the ones you're going to look at for revisions. Okay, or to see, you know, basically information. Okay, so receiving, these are typically something that is unique to the company, how they do it. Take a look at that, make sure that I got it right. And if not, then change it so that it is right. Shipping, same thing. Typically is unique to how the company actually does it. Breach incident report, that's just the way it has to be. Calibration, control of non-conforming material. This one you're going to want to look at because it's a problem child. What can I tell you? New computer. Missing that button. Yeah, you're going to want to know this. Everything has to be categorized from the time that you receive it and right through to the time you ship it out.
Interesting. So what do you mean by categorized?
We'll take a look at that.
All right.
Okay. I don't want to spoil the surprise.
All right. I'm in.
Okay. Facility equipment and maintenance, pretty much the same. Housekeeping, processing. This is going to be, again, is unique to how everybody does it within their organization. Again, want to make sure that I've reflected it properly. That doesn't give you any heartburn. Same thing with processing secure data destruction, transportation. Not really a lot you can do with that, but you need to understand it because there are some pretty stringent requirements in there. Validation verification is the way it is. Packaging and labeling, yeah, take a look at that. Make sure that there's nothing in there gives you any heartburn. Handling, preservation, and storage, exactly the way the standard wants it. Filing for license and permits. Purchasing, orders and contractual requirements. Yeah, take a look at that. I get my cursor to work here. Same thing with sales. That includes sales to downstream vendors. Training competence is the way it is. This one, handling has harassment and discrimination investigation. You have a policy for harassment and discrimination. Okay.
All
Now,
right.
it hasn't happened yet, but I just know it's going to happen. You know, I know how auditors think. And I know that you're going to run into an auditor who's going to say, okay, you have a policy for it, but what do you do if it happens?
Gotcha.
Now, there's nothing in the standard that says you have to do it. It just says you have to have a policy. So we wrote this, and it's based on the federal law. So it is exactly what you're not going to, unless you're harassing yourself, and want to file a complaint against yourself. It is there just
Gotcha.
in case. Now, as you get bigger, then okay, you may need it. Health and Safety Committee, yeah, again, it's just you, buddy. I mean, what can I say? Don't spend time on it. Internal and external audits, assessments, management review. Again, just the way the standard wants them. Continual improvement, document control. Yeah, emergency preparedness and response. I should take a look at that, because that diagram that you draw for the facility layout, you're going to use that document in this document too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
specifically, your entrances and your exits.
Yeah.
I
Fire
mean,
extinguisher.
you've been into buildings that have the fire, the what do you call it, fire escape routes.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm probably
know.
gonna need to hang one of those up in my house, the escape routes.
Well, in your garage.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, basically, if you were in a commercial building, they would already be there. And I usually just tell my clients, just make a copy of it and then put on there where the first aid kit is, where the extinguishers are, and where the main shutoffs are, for electricity, water, and gas. Okay. Facility closure is exactly the way the standard wants it. Focused material management plan, internal, external communications, monitoring and reporting, nonconformance corrective action. You can see. So, security. Yeah, I want you to take a look at security. Okay. So out of all of this, when you get ready to do your review for revisions, the only ones you're going to look at are the ones that are highlighted. Out of
Gotcha.
all of these
That's not too bad.
procedures, there's like 8 that you really need to pay attention to. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to focus in on the significant few rather than the insignificant many, because you got plenty of time to go through the other ones. But to get the system finalized, these are the big hitters. These are the ones that we need to make sure that I wrote them correctly, and that you can live with what it actually says in there.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's look at some of the problem children. Okay, so let's this one. Okay, this one just bugs me to no end. What can I say? And then I come to find out today that Siri just came out with a new one. I don't think it's taken effect yet, but we just got the notice on it today. Okay, so let's look at a little bit of the structure of the procedures. Procedures are all set up exactly the same way. We have the header in here. We have this MS manual. It's kind of like a home button. If I get lost, I can always get back to the manual on no matter what the document is. It's always got that home button on it. So we have the O preceding this means it's an operational procedure. If it's administration, it'll have an A. If it's planning, it'll have a P. And then most of them have a process flow. Basically, it's just, okay, here's a quick flow of how things should work in very general terms. And just so somebody coming in here can look at it and say, oh yeah, I'm in the right place. If we talk about anything in the management system, in the procedure, it'll be called out up here. And we'll tell you it's linked. And if just in case that link doesn't work for some reason, we tell you where it's actually located. So this reference table is split up into 3. So these are the inputs. These are the things that you will or may need to do this procedure.
Sure.
The outputs are, what am I going to have when I finish this procedure? What should I have? Then we always tell you what the next procedure is. Okay, I did this. Now what? Where am I going from here? So we tell you in here. Okay, so we essentially kind of just tweaked what it said in the REC document in here. So you have controlled and unrestricted streams. Here's your control streams, your unrestricted streams, data sanitization status. And then we get down here. Here's your cosmetic descriptions. Okay. So coming in the door, pretty much everything is going to be a C0. Okay. And then we have, poor, use fair, use good, use very good, excellent, certified, unused. That would be if it was in its original packaging. Okay, unopened, new in the box, same thing. Okay, so, and here's information on what kind of constitutes each one of these. So you use poor. What is it? Missing critical parts. Well, it doesn't have the enter button is missing. Well, that'd be a critical part. Yeah. Visual appearance, label condition. That would be the labels on the actual equipment. Dents and scratches and so on and so forth. It's just Okay. Now, if that isn't bad enough, now once you start doing anything with it, you have to give it a functional category along with its cosmetic category. So we have FM, minimal function, non-functional, collectible or specialty equipment. Specialty equipment would be considered something that you cannot test. Okay, like a Square D controller. The only way to test it, well, without going through jump through a bunch of hoops and stuff like that, and measuring voltages and amps and resistance and all that other stuff, or having a special piece of equipment to do it. The only way to tell is to basically plug it in and see if it works. And again, you don't have the equipment to plug it in to see if it works. So that would be considered specialty equipment. Those actually get sold with a very specific return policy on it. Collectible things are just basically, that's exactly what they are. I'm sure you have collectibles.
Yep.
They are what they are. You don't mess with them. They just are what they are. Okay. Verified specialty equipment. That would be if it was verified by the person that you got it from. Again, like a Square D controller. Well, I got a certificate from the people that I bought it from, says it was working when we took it out. Something like that. So everything in the facility gets a cosmetic category and it gets a functional category. So again, down here, then we explain all that. Okay, so minimal function. Okay, it's only going to have two cosmetic categories. It's either damage or use fair. So, and again, it's a problem. Nobody likes it, but that's the way you got to play the game if you want to get certified.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have the revision table at the end of it. Okay, let's go ahead and close that. And we're going to this breach incident report. Let me go ahead. Okay, and again, like I said, if you would, you know, lost a data bearing device, um, or it was stolen, um, or anything like that, where you lost control of it, let's put it that way. Um, then you have to go through this exercise of the breach incident report. Okay, so you have to do a corrective action report, and you have to also do the breach incident report log. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So it's got it's a lot of dates and information in here. What corrective action reports did you issue for this, or what continual improvement reports did you do for it? Any additional information here, and then you have to notify everyone that was connected with that data device. Okay, so here's a place to log those people in here, and what their contact numbers were. So for yours, one, maybe two would probably be, all you would use. You get into bigger organizations and, okay, well, you know, I
So what
got
you're
it
saying, so this
from,
is something that you would send up the chain of command if you would.
right. Yeah.
Okay, but
I
realistically, it
got it
needs.
from
I
a
got you.
hospital. Yeah. I got it from a
Yeah,
hospital. I've got to notify 5 different departments,
yeah.
that stuff.
So what you're saying is, I gotta. If it was a hospital, I would have to contact the hospital and then let the hospital departments know. Then okay,
Right. Yeah,
I
they
got you.
would, contact them. They would tell you who you have to contact, then you would just list them in here.
Gotcha.
Okay. So Siri frowns on losing data devices, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that's relatively reasonable in the day and age.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think East Stewards, which is another recycling standard. The East Stewards actually requires you to maintain $1 million insurance policy just in case.
Man,
Okay, let's see. What else I want to look at in here? Yeah, let's just jump over to the forms. Okay. Oop. So let's go into Tech Tools. Go into the forms here. And again, when we went into the records and all those things had an acronym on it, well, here's all the acronyms. So it makes it very easy to know, you know,
want to click.
what
Yeah.
where the form goes, when you're filling it out. And that's the one thing is that, and Cam is constantly yelling at me for doing this. Make sure that when you go to open one of these blank forms that you save it. Save it to the record folder before you start writing on it, or Cam will yell at you.
Okay.
And then you have to beg forgiveness, and then you go back. Okay. One of the nice things about this management system is that the V2 here, see that little gray button? See, if you click on that button, it shows you the whole history of this document here. Okay. Now, if we got into one of these other documents, let's say well, the nice thing is you can restore any document in here to any point in time that you want, and it will record that you restored that document, and they'll tell you the date you restored it back to. So if you brought something up, well, let's just do a practical demonstration. Okay, I'll pull this up and I'm going to mess with it. I haven't saved it, so I'm just gonna, I'll just give it a number on here. Okay. So I'll close it. And that little blue pen means that it's open or that it's being processed. So just wait for that blue pen to disappear, and you can see it's jumped to V3. So I can come over here to V3. I said, yeah, I know this is what I did. I screwed up. I never should have done that. So I can come over here and I can say restore it. And you can see it tells me that I restored this to a previous version and the date of that version, the date that I restored it, and the time. So if I close that and I open this back up, there's no report number on there. That comes in very handy. So if I had written on it and went, oops, I shouldn't have done that, then I would go over here and I would do I would save it. And I think we went through that on the last thing with the workbooks. You do save a copy, you tell it what you want to save it as, you can rename it and so on and so forth. You put it in the correct directory, and then you can come back here and you can go back into the folder and actually restore it back. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, there's a certificate of destruction. Now you send your things down to be destroyed.
Yeah, most
Correct.
stuff gets destroyed. Yeah.
Okay. Do they issue you a certificate of destruction?
I have to ask for it, and they don't give me usually specifics. Like if I need
Yeah.
one for each hard drive, they're just going to give me a certificate for 10 pounds of hard drives.
Okay, so that's going to be an issue. Because data devices you have to track.
Right.
Okay, you have to, and when you do the data destruction or data sanitization.
Right.
Well,
that's what I was hoping to do, is to sanitize them, and then that way I can provide their certificate of destruction, and then I can just take them in and have them physically destroyed afterwards.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's not a bad idea.
That's what I learned from my friend who did this, and that's what he does. Is he would just wipe them about 7 times, have the serialization and all that, and then send that to the company, and then just take them and have them scrapped.
Yeah, I think actually Microsoft has a DoD compliant wipe program.
Yes, sir. It's 7 wipes.
Yep. Okay.
He has that as his little thing on his website. He's follow DoD standards.
There you go. Okay, you also have to verify that program every once in a while.
Of course.
You know, and you have to verify a certain number of those drives afterwards. You can simply do that by, well, you have your friend send them 5 drives and have them run it on, have them check it on his and see if there's any data on it. The worst part is cell phones. It's very easy. You think, okay, I'm just going to flash the memory and set it back to the factory default, right?
Oh, I know it's way more complicated than that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because there are programs out there and they're not that expensive. It's like I've seen them for less than $200. That you can plug a cell phone into it and you can recover everything that was on that cell phone. So what
I figured the exception was if you were to max out the memory, delete everything, max out the memory again, rinse and repeat a few more times, it would eventually begin to cover up old stuff.
Well, the simplest way is just load a new operating system on it.
Right.
You load a new operating system on it, it destroys everything.
Huh.
And that's the way most companies, the big companies, like Wireless Alliance, who does a lot of, they do just about all the refurbishing for Verizon. They're a big company. That's how they address the issue. Just load a new operating system on it, and there's no data, and it can't be recovered. There's nothing on there that can be recovered because there's nothing there. Now, loading a new operating system on a phone I don't know if that actually requires a license or not. I know if you were doing iPhones, yeah, definitely. Not a big fan of Mac.
Can you just Linux everything and just force its way through? I wonder if that's an option.
I don't know. Can you do a Linux on a cell phone?
I think they have their own versions. It's probably not the normal.
Do they? Oh, well,
I could
Linux
be wrong.
Linux is open source, which
Yep.
means that you can use it. Anybody can use it. So I like about open source. Linux is actually an upgraded version of Unix, which is really old. I mean, we were using that back in the 70s. In fact, that's one of the first programming languages I learned was Unix, along with BASIC, Pascal, Fortran, COBOL, all that crap. That is absolutely useless information now.
That's a little cool. A little cool history.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of time spent that just doesn't mean anything anymore. I wouldn't say it was a waste of time, but looking back on it now, some of the programming languages that they have now, I mean, I got as far as HTML and then I quit. Said, this stuff is just getting way too complicated for me. Leave it to the young people. Okay, so this certificate of destruction would be what it would be for this is the kind of information that you would have to get back from your supplier from everything that you sent to them. Manufacturer, model, serial number, if it had an asset number, the type and the source, who did you get it from? And then there's a key down here to tell you what all this stuff means, it's just so your sanitization would be clear purge. And then your verification. Does that Microsoft White program give you a verification? Does it rerun and tell you whether it passed or not?
It's been a while since I've done it. I have to double check.
Okay, because you have to have that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing is that you have to keep that record of it too. Now, I don't know if most of those white programs usually keep that information resident in the system itself, so that you can recover it if you need to. But you need to verify that it can actually do that. Yeah. So if I come back and say, well, a month later, I come back and somebody's complaining that you didn't sanitize something, that you'll be able to go back in the record and say, yes, it was run on this program. Here's the verification here. Okay. Oh yeah. I wanted to hit that transportation one too, because that's a bear. Well, let's get these in order. Here's the emergency. Whoop! Don't do that. Where'd you go? There we go. Emergency preparedness response. You're required to have it, even though you're a one-man operation. Again, here's that process flow I was saying. Very general. Just say if everything worked exactly the way it was supposed to, this is what's going to happen. And am I in the right ballpark or not? Okay, you can see on here, it's got another caveat statement here that it's basically, this is just a stopgap, for the immediate reaction that, if you have something like a chemical spill or something like that, you would go to the appropriate SDS sheet to find out exactly what to do. You're going to say, responsibilities in case of an emergency. Well, in this case, that's going to be you, buddy. That's it.
Me.
And your emergency responders. Okay. Other than that, I would just leave these just as they are for now. When you get to the point where you're bigger, then you can come back here and fill it in. In fact, let's just do that. Just make these TBD
Well, I
for right.
guess even probably the next time I employ like 2 or 3 people, it's still gonna be me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like it'd take a little while. It'd be like 5 to 10 people before it really start adding names.
right. Because essentially, this was actually written based on the federal disaster emergency management requirements. Anybody that's a first responder will recognize it right off the bat. So that's why it says incident commander on here. This is the
Makes
person
sense.
who's making the decisions until they are relieved by the proper authority, which would be the emergency responders. Emergency communications, general prevention policy. Then we get into the situations, fire prevention policy, inspections, and so on and so forth, drills and exercises. Then here we got medical emergency, active shooter, something we had to add in there. Um, General hazardous materials, spills, stuff like that. Gas leaks, noxious odors, utility equipment failures, fire, of course, fire, severe weather, tornado, being where you are. If you were out in California, we would hack in there. We would take tornado out, and we would replace it with earthquake.
Makes sense.
And then your emergency incident investigation and reporting. There's a form for that. Okay, so now we get down here where we really need to get. Okay, so your emergency contact list. Of course, the incident commander is always going to be on there. Your fire and police on 911. Then your environmental cleanup or remediation company. Okay, this doesn't have to be somebody that you have a contract with. It doesn't have to be somebody you even talked to before. All we need is a company name, address, and phone number. That's all we need. I mean, you can use ServPro if you want to. Just somebody who is in your area that does environmental cleanup based on what you're doing.
Right.
And then you have your facility and property maps. And we already talked about that map that you're going to do of the facility is basically going to go in here, and you can see here. Here's your exit route. Here's where your fire extinguisher is, first aid kit if you have it, and shelter in place, which basically is going to be in your house and in your basement, right? Oh, you have a basement there?
I do.
Okay, good. Okay. So when you get that diagram, we just delete this one and replace it with the one that you have. And then again, we have the revision history on here. Is there anything in particular that you want to look at? Maybe
Not
one of
as of
these.
right now. I feel like I
Okay,
got a
so
decent idea.
here's where we're going to go from here. Okay. What you're going to do now is you're going to go through the ones that we highlighted. And you're going to look at them, and you're going to read through them, see if there's anything that gives you any heartburn, or if I wrote it wrong. Hey, listen, I'm pretty good at this stuff, but sometimes I miss the mark. Don't be afraid to say, hey, what were you doing, smoking crack when you wrote this thing? You're not going to offend me, okay? Because I want it to be right. You want it to be right. Okay. So what I want you to do, let's get back up here. Okay. Let's just take processing here. Pretty short for a process flow. Okay, let's just say there was something in here you didn't like the way it said. You know, what I want you to do is I want you to go into right next to the text. Let's see. As required or scheduled. Let's say you want to change that. Okay, let's say you want to change that as required to schedule. You want that change to say when scheduled on Monday. Okay. So what I want you to do is right next to where the change is. I want you to
As required to schedule when material.
okay. I want you to type it right in there.
All right.
Now what I want you to do is I want you to highlight it. Now pick another color other than yellow, because the yellow, if you see in here,
Yeah, yellow's for
it's
important stuff for me, and then you'll get it mixed up, and yeah.
right, yeah. So just pick a different color. You know, it doesn't even matter. You can do green or blue or whatever color strikes your fancy. That way, when we come in to actually make the changes, we can pick them out real quick, and I can go, okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Boom, we're done. You know, unhighlight it, take out the other one, and we're good. Or it may be something like, okay, well, the way it's written, if we change it to what you want it, it's going to conflict with other parts of the system. So at that point, we could say, okay, let's compromise on this and figure out how we're going to write this so that it works for you and it works for the standard too, or the management system. So put it in there, put it in and highlight it. And then if you have any questions or comments, right under the revision table, just write them in there and highlight them.
Right.
That way, if you have questions, you don't have to, write them on a separate piece of paper and worry about losing it or forgetting where it is or anything like that. It's going to be right here, and we can address it right there, and then we'll just delete it out. Okay, so now that I did that, let me go ahead and take that back out. Oop, that thing kind of messed with me. Just that, nothing else. There. That's what you should have done in the first place. Okay. On all of these documents, the document management is basically going to be you. Just slap owner in them. You know, but concentrate on the ones in the manual that we've highlighted. Get those first.
Gotcha.
And then, you can poke through these other ones as you get time. Like I said, they're pretty much written exactly the way the standard wants them to be written. So they're really, we don't need to spend a lot of time on that. It's just, let's get the system finalized as quick as we can. And always keep in mind that what you're doing, and when you're looking at review and revision, you're looking not at what you're doing, just what you're doing now, but you're looking into the future. Okay. This is how we're doing it now, but is this actually how we're going to be doing it in the future? So when you're reading through those things, keep in mind that, okay, down the road, how am I going to want to do this? And like I said, if I got it wrong, I got it wrong. We'll fix it. That's what we're supposed to do. I want to make sure that this is accurate, because we don't want to put things in there. If you're not doing it that way, the auditor will catch it. Trust me. And that's the last thing we want to have happen. What we want to do is we want to make this thing so painfully obvious to the auditor that they have a certain amount of days they have to spend on your site.
Mm.
Yeah, I think with R2 9001 or Rios, I think they have to spend 5 days.
Well, that might get really boring if I don't have a lot of work at the time.
Exactly. That doesn't mean that they're
Oh,
going to
man.
be auditing all the time. It just means that they have to be on site for that many days. So what we want this thing to be so painfully obvious to them that, the last day he's got nothing to do but, sit there,
Kind of
drink
wants to
coffee,
leave.
and tell war
Yeah,
stories.
that would be fun.
Yeah, yeah. So far, any questions, observations, Reuter snide comments, anything?
It all seems pretty clear so far. I see you guys have done it for a
Oh,
while. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Like I said, I feel like if I get questions, it's going to be once I'm in the middle of it, and I feel like having the YouTube video alone is going to be able to answer probably about half of them. Most of them are probably just going to feel awkward. I feel like that'll be the main thing going through, and just be like, is it really just putting my name down over and over again for 40% of this?
Yeah. So we usually figure, I mean, you got stuff to do. And figure, to get through these 8, figure it'll probably take you about 2 weeks to get through it. Just because you've got other things to do. We understand you got a business to run. So, and you have your other job to do too. So just plan on it taking about 2 weeks. If you get it done sooner, let me know.
Too.
As soon as you get everything, as soon as you get those procedures looked at, any revisions and comments and stuff noted in there, let me know, and then we'll schedule the review and the revision session, and we'll get the system finalized. And then if there's not a lot of changes, then we can jump right into the implementation and rollout.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a novice when it comes to most of this stuff, so I probably don't guarantee you a lot of changes.
Okay, just remember, this is the way you do it.
Gotcha.
And if it gives you heartburn, let me know. It gives you heartburn, and we'll figure it out.
Will do.
Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen here. So, that's the wrong one. There. Stop sharing. Thank you. Okay. So basically, what we'll do now is I'll wait for you to contact me. When you contact me and say you've gone through everything, and then we'll schedule the next meeting. If you run into anything, well, I should have asked you, how are you coming on the workbooks? You gotten anywhere on them at all?
Not
Let's
much. No,
let's find out.
I have not done anything. I watched the YouTube video again. Is what I've done.
Okay. Okay. If you run into things on any of those workbooks or anything like that, or even in the system, you run into something, you need some help on it, give me a shout.
Will do.
That's what I'm here for. I've been doing this for years, so I can get you through it pretty quick.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, even when we finish the system, we're not actually finished with you. We don't close out a project until you get certified. That includes if they have any nonconformances or anything. If they write a nonconformance against the system, the way we wrote it, fix it. And we answer the nonconformance. If you need help with answering a nonconformance, we'll help you with that too.
Awesome.
So, okay, if there's no questions, I guess we can go ahead and button this up and call it a day.
Works for me. Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Now this video, depending on how busy the server is, it'll probably go up tomorrow. And then again, I'll let you know, and I'll send you hard links to where they're at.
Sweet.
Okay. Well, you have fun, and we'll talk to you sometime within the next 2 weeks.
I'll be looking forward to it. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bye for now.